Julie, if you could just re-intro yourself, maybe remind folks where you're joining us, and then just give us a quick background on what Raina did for her GAP program.
Sure. I'm Julie Gilbertson. We live in Minnesota, where there's currently about 3 inches of snow on the ground. And Raina did for her, well, I guess it says on there, she did Barcelona for her language. She really wanted to further her Spanish. That was probably her first goal of the year, and kind of why she chose those different locales. So she did live with a family in Barcelona, and then enjoyed Costa Rica and particularly loved the Galapagos. She thought that was an extraordinary thing to do and definitely was a highlight for her. And then she did her internship in Berlin, which was still quite under lockdown at the time. So I think her experience there was a little bit different than the kids, hopefully, who are traveling in the future will have. Yeah.
That's a great place to start. Perfect. We'll come back for more. Just want to get a sense of where everyone's going here. And we're going to swing it over to Greg to hear about Connor's here.
Yeah, again, Greg Craven, live in Denver, Colorado. Connor went last year for the full year. In fact, this time last year, he was in Costa Rica for his kind of service projects. And he studied language in Rome, which he loved, absolutely loved Rome. And then also to Julie's point, he also loved Ecuador and Galapagos. Just had a fantastic time there. And then he did his internship in Stockholm, which was interesting. So when he left in January after the holidays, he had to pack for basically the equator, as well as going to Stockholm in February. So it was very interesting, packing light, trying to pack for both of those climates. But for Connor, it was a great experience, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more. But thanks, Kyle.
Awesome, thank you, Greg. And then Kristen, a quick overview for Aiden.
So Aiden did his language immersion in Paris, and then he did service in Costa Rica and his internship in Berlin. I forgot to mention, we're from Concord, Massachusetts. And it was really, I would say, a life-altering experience for him. He came back in more confident, more independent, really ready to hit college running. And even though his itinerary didn't end up looking anything remotely like what it was scheduled to initially look like, we had to kind of roll with the punches with COVID. But he was really happy with all of the locations and is looking forward to going back. I think the only disappointment in Berlin, I think that was his favorite place, but the weather was not so great, and it was just starting to turn nice by the time they came home. But I think he'll definitely end up taking another trip to Berlin at some point. He really loved it.
Amazing. Great place to start. All right. We want to be able to see everyone's face a little bit better here. So I think really the 3 main categories that we'll cover here is touching a little bit on the planning process and how you heard about gap year and made that decision, what it was like on the road, and then some outcomes and takeaways. So I think first thing is, how did gap year get on the radar for the 3 of you? And I'll open that to anyone that's ready to start.
So
I can. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, you go.
So we started looking into gap year programs just because for our kids who graduated last year, just through the whole COVID process, I think he wasn't really so thrilled about or excited about going to college. And I think he just needed a little more time, as my girlfriend says, a little more time to ripen on the vine. And so we started looking at gap year programs, and my only thing that I insisted upon was I didn't want him to just use it as an excuse to go backpacking for a year or just, throw the year away. It really needed to be purposeful. And so we started looking at gap year programs online, just doing a random search. And we looked at quite a few other options, and this option with EF, I felt like was the most structured, the most supportive, and the most well-rounded, because it had the service component, it had the language immersion component, and it had the internship component. And so then he still did the whole college application process. He got accepted, deferred a year, which was easy to do. And he goes to a large university now where there's 40,000 undergrad students. So when we met with their admissions advisor, they said, worst case scenario, if he doesn't go, we lost our $250 deposit. So we were very excited for him to do this. We had other friends who had done gap years. And then as it turned out, we live in Concord, Massachusetts, which is just outside of Boston, and found out the headquarters were in Cambridge. So it was that was comforting too. And the more I talked to friends, I couldn't believe how many people had even heard of EF because of the middle school and the high school trips that are all over. But so our search was really started online, and it's the best decision we ever made. Best decision he ever made.
Yeah, and I just I'll echo what Kristen said in terms of COVID for Connor. I think going through that year and a half just took a toll, and I just it was interesting because we could see it in him as he was starting to apply for schools and getting acceptance letters and everything else. We kept trying to kind of push the subject of, okay, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And it was just clear that he just wasn't there. He wasn't ready. And there were some confidence issues with that too. But so we started exploring different options as well, kind of similar to Kristen's story, and started looking at different things. He started talking about, maybe I take a year, take gap year, this and that. And we said, well, what does that mean, right? So just started doing a lot of research. Fortunately, we have a friend in the neighborhood who works for EF. She's on the au pair side of the business, but she's very familiar with the gap year program. And so we talked to her as well, and just started to realize that this would be a really good option for Connor. He loves to travel. He's actually done some travel, and he's done a lot of adventure stuff as a Boy Scout and Eagle Scout. So it just worked out to be perfect for him and a good option. So, but that's really what led to it. He finally just said to us, not ready to go to college, don't know what I want to do, don't know where I want to go. And now he's in college and absolutely thriving and loving it. So it was really kind of ended up being the perfect option for him.
It's great context there. Thank you. Julie?
So our story is a little bit different. I was actually the one that brought this program to Raina. She didn't know anything about it. My father had been a teacher for many years, and he led countless EF tour groups in the summertime. So our family's been on multiple EF, just regular, summer tour trips. So I was familiar with the company. I trusted the company. I know how they operate. And I saw a Facebook ad come through for the gap year. And I read it and I just thought it seemed absolutely incredible. So I brought it to Raina before I even talked to my husband, actually. I brought it to Raina and I said, I think you should do this. I would really like you to do this and not go to college right away. And she was like, what? That's weird, Mom. I don't know about that. She goes, I want to be in a sorority. I want to go to college. I want to do what all my friends are doing because that's what everybody does. And I just said, okay, well, just think about it. And I just kind of slid her the materials and walked away and let her think about it. And it only took her 2 weeks to come back to me. And she said, okay, I want to do this program. That is pretty cool. And I just think the world is the best teacher. Like the other kids, she had no idea what she wanted to do. And I just thought this would be the perfect way for her to learn about herself, her strengths, her weaknesses, maybe find a focus or a passion. COVID obviously was a complicated time period, and I just felt like she wasn't going to get as much out of college in that year anyway. So I just really encouraged her to do that, and it turned out to be the absolute best thing ever. But it was funny because at that point, then we had to go to her dad and say, oh, by the way, she's not going to college. She's going to travel the world. Hope that's okay. But we're passionate travelers, and it only took him a day or two to read through the program and realize what an amazing opportunity this would be for her. So yeah, we pulled the trigger and it was incredible.
Amazing, Julie. You know, you bring up a good point, and I think we see this sometimes. Student is the one that gets excited, and sometimes it is the parent too. So I think it's important to recognize that. You also hit on something, and I'd love to hear if anyone else has thoughts on this. There's a lot that goes into this decision to not go to college. We all know in the States, you know, there's a lot of pressure on students. There's a lot of expectation. All of their friends are going there. There's a big emotional hurdle to work through. I'm just wondering, you know, I think from your perspective, Julie, how did you manage that, and how did you support Raina in that?
I do think she felt a lot of pressure. You know, when they have like commitment day in high school, and you all get to say what college you're going to, and then the sweatshirt you're wearing. She wore an EF shirt. She was very excited about that. So I think a lot of people didn't understand, including our family. My husband's father he just thought it was the craziest decision ever. How do you not send your child to college? And if they don't go this year, they're never going to go back. And I don't think that's necessarily true. And of course, these are the two panelists are perfect examples of that. Their kids, I think they emerged from this very confident, very independent, very capable, much clearer in their thought processes and their thinking, and kind of have an idea of what they want to do, and they put that plan into action. For Raina, I don't know if you want me to talk about what she's doing now or save that for later.
Let's come back to it, because I think it's important to give a little bit more time for. Yeah.
Okay, so just the college thing and not going, you do have to deal with, you know, a lot of people who have expectations that your child should go to college, and what are you letting them do? But I always told people, I said, you know what, as far as I'm concerned, this year that she's taking is the equivalent to a year or 2 or 3 of college, in my opinion, with everything that she learned and gained, not only personally, but then just the education that she gained along the way. It was immense. I just think it was fantastic. So you kind of just got to go with your gut, know your kid if they can handle transitions and, you know, being in different places and bouncing around. And if you know your child and they're willing to do it, go for it.
Yeah, I agree with Julie, and I would say too that, you know, one of the things that I found very interesting, because you know, you're a little bit maybe reluctant to tell people, you know, what they decide to do, but what was interesting to me was how many parents came to us and said, wow, I wish my kids would have done that. I wish I had known about that at the time. And I would say that almost 100% of the time, that's what we heard from parents, because their kids either struggled or they just realized the amount of education that they would get doing it. It's to Kyle's point, you know, we kind of push, you know, this idea that you go from high school right to college, but in a lot of countries that's not the case, right? Gap years are very normal in other countries, and to be able to take that time, kind of figure out exactly what you want to do, and that sort of thing. But yeah, so you know, you end up hearing horror stories from other parents of their kids, you know, changing majors multiple times, or you know, struggling and this and that. So you know, what I found was a lot of them were, you know, had wished that they had heard about this program before. So
Perfect. Kristen, you're all good on this one?
Yeah, you know, I agree with what Greg said. You know, Aiden actually, when he went to college, he was taking a speech class, and he did a whole presentation on the benefits of travel and doing a gap year program. And the teacher was so impressed, and everyone wanted to learn more. Really, he got a lot of pressure from his friends who were all graduating and going away to college his senior year. Why aren't you going to college? You should be going to college. And so I think he was a little unsure of himself, that he had made the right decision. But when he was doing this paper, he was actually looking up statistics too of the percentage of kids that go on to college following a gap year program, the percentage of kids that do better academically as compared to their peers. And I think the lowest percentage rate he found was like 93%. And I don't remember in which category it was, but there's no downside to doing a gap year. Yes, we did the gap year he graduated from high school, and then he left that September to go on the full year gap year program. So, and he's killing it right now in college. He actually is #1 in his calculus class. He has a 4.0. He's doing amazing. He's a comp sci major in a competitive engineering program. So I'm not sure that he would be pulling these grades right now had he not had that year to mature and improve his confidence. And, he was always a very shy kid. And he came home for Christmas, and my husband and I were astounded that he spent all of his time downstairs with us on the couch, talking and sharing. And he wasn't that open before he went on his gap year program. I think just, everything from navigating the subway system in a foreign country to he lost his debit card and had to figure out how to contact the bank and have another one mailed to him in a foreign country. It just was really, there was not one downside. And the internship program that he did in Berlin, they paired it with something that would be comparable to his major in college. So he actually did coding for a company in Berlin. And then when he came home over the summer, they hired him as a freelance employee, and he did coding for them and helped them develop a website last summer before he transitioned to college. So, I mean, that's great resume building and a great life experience. So
That's awesome. Hey, shout out to Aiden too. Great to hear that he's doing so well. We had a question, Christian, you were just touching on some of this. I'll just make sure that it's directed for the entire group too, but just a question about, wanting to help give their student the chance to develop executive functioning skills, things like organization, time management, responsibility, communication, and dependence. The question is, how are these skills improved upon a gap year? Open to anybody if you feel like that's relevant.
I mean, his independence, he navigated an hour commute and figured it out on his own to get from the outer suburbs of Paris into inner city Paris every day. In Berlin, he did a lot of the work remotely, but they did end up meeting up, and he had to, by the time you get to their internship program, EF does such a great job of scaling down the scaffolding of support that from their language immersion, they're living with a host family, and their at least one meal a day is provided by the host family. So he doesn't have to worry about meals as much and, his housing. And then by the time you get to your internship, he's doing his own grocery shopping, his own laundry, his own cooking. If he didn't cook for himself and grocery shop, he wouldn't eat. So, and then, money management, he had a budget, and his confidence, he was mostly hanging out with his schedule didn't always coincide with the kids from EF, but so he was making friends with other students from around the world. And in Berlin, on the last leg, his dorm room was he was the only one from EF on that floor, and everyone else on his floor was from the Netherlands, from Mexico, from South America, from all over the world. And they would get together and make dinner together in the common area. So he, it really helped with his confidence, with communicating and building friendships, lasting friendships with people from all around the world, different cultures, different languages, and the independence of just being able to commute on a daily basis in a foreign country, which is not easy for many adults, let alone an 18-year-old.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Thank you, Kristen. I appreciate that. Too, you know what? And feel free to tie that into our next one, Julie. I'll send it your way. But I think we shift a little bit and we want to start highlighting what actually happened on program. So I'm going to leave this one a little bit open-ended. Julie, if you want to maybe just touch on highlights for Raina on what maybe she really enjoyed or what you saw being really beneficial to her. And then second part would be if there's anything that you particularly want to mention or highlight for our group of families here this evening about the on-program experience.
Sure. Well, one thing I will say is at the end of the program, she ended in London for their kind of recap. And I flew into London to meet her. And then she and I did another 3 weeks of travel. And I was blown away on that very first day. We get to our hotel, we get settled in, we meet up at the airport, get to the hotel. And the next morning we're like, okay, what should we go do? And I think we're going to go to this museum. And she just whips out her phone. And in 2 seconds, she had our entire trip planned. We're going to walk 2 blocks to this bus stop. Then we're going to get on this bus. We're going to take that to such and such a stop. And then we're going to hop on the tube and we're going to take that the rest of the way. And I just kind of looked at her, what? I was going to take a few minutes to figure out, how we were going to get to where we're going. And she had it done literally in 2 minutes. It was amazing. So for the entire rest of the trip for 3 weeks, she navigated us all around Europe. And I'm capable of doing that, but not as quickly as she did with as much confidence. And I mean, I was so surprised. It was kind of like a reversal of roles. I felt like a kid for a minute and she was the adult, like leading me around. And I was just so proud of her. And she just she was aware, she was conscientious of her surroundings. She knew what she was doing, where she was going. I just thought that was such an impressive bout of knowledge that she has gained. She's always been a really social person, super communicative, but since she's been home, she's also so responsible. And like Kristen said too, likes to come and sit on the couch and talk with us and hang out. But she did not know what she wanted to do when she got back from the gap year. She still was contemplating doing some college, maybe online college. And forewarning, she did pick up a boyfriend on this gap year and kept him. So it's possible that they'll meet somebody very important on this trip too. And I wouldn't be surprised, who knows what happens, but if they stayed together, that would be another benefit that she accrued over the gap year. But what she's doing right now is over the summer, she kind of took the time to work and figure out what she wanted to do. And now she's actually in a program to become a pilot. And she's super excited. She gets her pilot's license. Just the next couple of weeks, she'll have her private's license. She is going on to do commercial. And I'm so thrilled for her because I really believe that she found where she was meant to be. And I don't think this would have happened had she not taken this gap year to really increase her passion for travel and her knowledge and her just confidence. It's amazing. That girl has just kind of roped the world and I'm so proud of her. It's really cool.
Yeah, Raina has unreal energy and presence, I think, as well too. So that's great to hear. Greg, we'll send it over your way. If you want to, I think it's kind of an open floor to talk about Connor's on-program experience and anything that you think would be important to highlight as well.
Yeah. Again, I mean, for him, it was just an incredible experience. Echoing, the other panelists, is just the confidence that he gained there was huge. He had a couple of situations that happened. And I want to highlight these just because I think it's important to understand that, you're not just throwing them out there, right? I mean, although they are learning to be confident, they also do have, a EF to help them. And there was a situation in Rome where he was flying from Rome to Costa Rica, I think through Amsterdam, if I remember. But he was something happened with checking in, and the gate agent needed some paperwork, or they thought he needed some paperwork. He tried to handle it on his own. He was doing everything he could, but eventually he ended up, calling EF, an emergency number, whatever that is. Kyle, I can't remember what you called it, but the emergency number. Yep. To get help, and they took care of it immediately. Unfortunately, by the time he called them, because he was trying to be confident and take care of it himself and self-reliant, it was too late. He missed his flight, but they were able to get him literally on the next flight the next morning, put him up in the dorm for the night near the airport in Rome, and he was able to get on the next flight. And actually, the flight ended up being better because it was more of a straight, direct route. But just the fact that they were able to do that, flying from Rome to Costa Rica, he was a day late, but it all worked out fine. We caught up with the group and everything was good. He had another situation in Ecuador when they were flying to Galapagos, where he tested positive for COVID because they had to be tested every time, all the time, and tested positive. So he had to stay again another night in Ecuador. But again, someone stayed with him from EF, was there with him, and tested him the next day, and it was negative. So he clearly had a false positive, but was able to get there the next day and everything else. So point being that, there is support there. EF was very good about helping out in all those situations. He also had a medical situation when he was in Stockholm, and they got him to to a local hospital and everything was fine. But just, having that there really helped. But in terms of confidence, I think it was Kristen that was mentioning too, the fact that, they're cooking their own meals. When he was in Stockholm, he had to figure it out. He was not with any EF people. And he had to go shopping on his own, figure it out. And Stockholm's not the cheapest place, as any of you know that have been there. It's very expensive. So he had to kind of, figure out a budget and what he could afford to buy food. And of course, he would make a lot of pasta, stuff like that. But he also was able to, like to Julie's point, able to travel confidently. He went up one weekend. He decided to take a 12-hour train trip up to the Arctic Circle in Sweden. And he booked a hotel, he booked the train, he booked a snowmobile tour trip to see the Northern Lights. He did all this on his own, which just kind of blew me away. So, they figured it out, and, I think it's just a wonderful experience all around for him. But I think those are the kind of things that I wanted to highlight. And again, to their parents' point, he's thriving now in college, loving it. Just really, it almost came back as a different kid, and I love it, just seeing that maturity and the confidence level that he has now.
I just wanted to add, piggyback on what Greg said about travel. For Christmas, we ended up buying Aiden a Euro pass, and he really used it. He went to Amsterdam. He and a group of kids went to Prague for a weekend. And he ended up going to Belgium. And so he ended up really using the opportunity of being located in Europe to travel around a little bit on the weekends to experience some other countries. And I know that there was a group of kids in Dublin, and they came over to Berlin too for a weekend. I think they caught a inexpensive flight. Travel around Europe is much cheaper than it is traveling around the United States. So it's easy for them to get a pretty cheap train ticket or a cheap flight. Nothing fancy, but it's a great cultural experience.
Great, thanks for adding there, Kristen. Just while we're on this topic and thinking about students being on the road, one of the most important things the entire time is safety. I'll just say, from the EF lens, the way that students are living and their day-to-day varies. It does vary greatly depending on the section of the program they're in or the location that they're in. But I'd love to just, open floor to talk about your perspective on anything safety related that you think families may just want to know about.
I'll start with that one. So a couple things. Reina was in Barcelona for the first period, and you hear about the petty theft in Barcelona. That's what you have to worry about, are the street thieves who will steal your purse or your passport or whatever. And we actually went to visit her when she was there for a couple of weeks. We went to visit her, and she was bragging to us about how she was so careful and nobody had stolen anything from her. And all of her friends had something, a passport, a wallet, something taken, and she had nothing. And literally the next night, a guy on the street ran by and yanked her phone just out of her hand. And then off he went. And she had no other way of navigating the city, of finding what bus she needed, of what train she needed. It was really, really difficult. And getting a new phone abroad is not an easy process. So I would highly recommend to anybody traveling that you bring an old phone and a SIM card and have that in their suitcase as a backup plan. Because particularly for these kids who are so techie and they're constantly looking up, bus routes and train times, it's important. So that was a wrench that was kind of thrown at us that we had to figure out how to fix. And it's fixable, but I would recommend that. And then as for safety, I would also recommend that parents do not spend all night on their Life 360. Turn it off. This is a time for your kids to navigate the world. You cannot be there with them every single second, and that will only cause you stress. I did watch it for a while at the beginning, and then I realized I can't do this. So I turned it off and just had to go with faith and trust her. And as long as they make sure that they're always having a buddy system, and wherever they go, they're communicative about where they're going. She did a lot of travel as well. And I did always tell her, please let me know, or let the EF team know, if you're going away for the weekend, where are you going? And make sure that somebody has your flight information and where you're staying. Because that's just important for somebody to be held accountable if should there's something go awry. But yeah, so safety, I actually felt really, really good. Even in the big cities, I think that EF tries their best to keep these kids safe and make sure that they aren't thrown to the wolves. They kind of know processes for things and have phone numbers of people to call should they get into a pickle.
Great.
I think you just need to have, some common sense. I mean, their kids are traveling in a lot of times in big cities, and it's no different than if they were traveling in New York or, LA. I mean, you don't carry, large wads of money with you. You don't have your cell phone out, flashing. So you have to have a little bit of street smarts. I don't think my son ever felt unsafe. He luckily didn't have his phone stolen, but there were other people, Julie, not just your daughter, but other kids that did happen, that he shared. So I think it's a great idea to bring an extra phone in your suitcase. I strongly recommend you get the SIM card through the gap year program, because it's a lot cheaper. We tried to go through our AT&T and it was ridiculously expensive. So that was definitely worth it. Yeah.
Plus, just to jump in real quick on you, plus if you do lose it, then Elizabeth literally overnights this new SIM card right away. The staff immediately gets it to you. So if you have to try through another company, AT&T or whatever, to get that over abroad, it's a lot harder. So EF just handles it for you. It's just much easier. Agreed.
I would also maybe have another form of, so Aiden did lose his debit card, and that was the only form of money he had. Mistake on our part. So I would make sure that your kid has a credit card or something else that they can leave back in a safe place with their passport, so that if something happens when they're out, they're not penniless, without access to money.
Absolutely. And just like that, we're already coming towards the back end of our time this evening. So I think just to give you all a chance to reflect and share a little bit of your takeaways, the question that I'm curious to hear about is, what are you proud of from your student, from their year? And if you want to add on anything that you've seen since they've come back. I know we've gotten a little bit snippets from everybody there, but I'm really curious, what stands out to you that you're really proud of about your son or daughter?
I'm proud of her decisiveness. I think before the gap year, she was just a typical teenage girl. I don't know, what do you want to, just was kind of all over the board. And now she is very focused, very determined, very decisive. She knows what she wants. She knows how she's going to do it. She's working her tail off. I've never seen her work so hard, just trying to earn money for her piloting and scheduling her flights. If she's not flying, she's working. She's incredibly determined that way. And I will say too, for those of you who are thinking about doing the gap year, we did have Raina pay 20% of the program. So she had some skin in the game. And I do think that's really, really important, because they take it seriously. They know their money's on the line too. I think when they go over there, they are going to keep that in the back of their mind too, that they don't want to get, expelled or have any kind of bad marks against them, because this is their investment too. And that was super important. So I would recommend that. But I just think she's become such an adult. She really turned into an adult.
Thanks, Julie.
I would say we're really proud of his ability for time management and how driven he has been to succeed, and also how understanding he is that there's not one path to success, but being really culturally aware of, different people and different cultures and different backgrounds have different paths, and they're all okay. So there's just not, it doesn't have to be high school, college, job. It could be high school, gap year, and then pilot or college. So that's what we're proud of.
Yeah, I would echo all that. I mean, I think, for Connor, high school was, it was a lot of times you had to get him out of bed in the morning, right, to get to high school, and stuff like that. And he really has changed now. He's completely different kid. He's up early, he's completely reliant, a lot more confident, just mature, and all that. So I think that's probably the thing that I would be most proud of. It's not, the one thing we haven't really talked about, but the projects that they did in Costa Rica and the amount of traveling and moving around, everything they did, it was hard work. They were doing, it wasn't easy stuff. I mean, yeah, they had a couple of days off or a few days where they could go play, but for the most part, it was hard work. And so, I was proud of that too. And he never complained or anything. He just, when he came back, it was all just a great experience and adventure. And I think it's only helped him to, now in college to, kind of just, time management has been a big piece, and just understanding and having goals and being able to understand what that means and everything else. So it's, overall just been a great experience.
Yeah, great answer.
Can I add one thing too?
Yeah.
One of the things I was most impressed with throughout the year is how appreciative she was. I can't tell you how many times I would get a text or a call that was very genuine and sincere. And it was just, Mom, thank you so much for encouraging me to do this. I appreciate you. Thank you. I know this was expensive. She just really, really, really was appreciative. And she's carried that forward. And I just think that's great that she recognizes the opportunity that she got to have. And to meet all the people from around the world. It was such a good experience. And she was very, very grateful for that.
And I think too, grateful from where our kids grew up, because they saw a whole different socioeconomic environment in Costa Rica and poverty, right? So Aiden was very appreciative of where he was born,
Great answers too. We actually talked with Raina on our last, one of our recent chats, and I think that came up for all of the alumni that were there. And I think we've seen that from past alumni too. When you get to college, you realize that it's not automatic. It's not a given. Now it's your chance to actually make the most of that opportunity. I'm so glad that you could highlight that. We did have another question, is just to kind of wrap everything and get our closing lingering questions. If anyone has a burning one, this is the time to drop it in. We'll try to get that answered. But a question about internships. I think if anyone feels comfortable to speak on the internship experience and just highlight a little bit of what that was and what that was like, that would be incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I can talk about Connor's internship in Stockholm. He ended up working for a really interesting marketing company, and they worked with kind of high-end furniture brands, and he was with another EF GAP student as well. So the two of them worked there on the internship, and went into the office every day. Had to figure out how to get there and everything else, and went in there and had a little space to work, and they gave him jobs and wrote press releases and different marketing stuff. They did some social media and wrote up stuff for social media posts and things like that. But really learned that business and that piece. Not he's not in marketing. It was not something that he decided to do, but at the same time, I think it was a great experience for him. And the company treated him very, very well. They were very nice. They gave him a lot of Fridays off, things like that, and let him leave early sometimes and stuff. But overall, it was just I think for him a good experience to see how companies operate in Sweden, and the offices were beautiful, and they're right right in the center of town and everything. So overall, great experience.
Aiden did an internship also with a marketing company in Berlin, and they had asked him to help design a website for various golf courses. They wanted it to be kind of like an Expedia where you'd put in different parameters, how many pars, different golf courses. And so they wanted him to kind of set up the website. He didn't finish the project, it's still ongoing, but it was a little bit of a learning curve for him. So he had to look some of the coding things up that he had experience with Python and Java, but some of the other coding languages he didn't. So, and then he actually brought some of his ideas to the company, and they were very receptive that they changed the way that they were the platform that they were using in order to build the website came from Aiden's suggestion. So I think that helped him improve like his confidence and his independence to initiative to, it takes a lot to bring that, an idea up to your boss when you're an 18-year-old kid. So it took him a while to build up the courage, a few weeks, but he did it and they loved it. And so that was really a great experience for him.
Well, and Raina, ironically, was Aiden's partner on that project.
They were
the ones
in the pictures. Did she have to take the photos of the golf?
So she did the marketing part and he did more of the coding part. And she enjoyed the work, but I mean, I think ultimately it was a great decision maker for her to realize, okay, this is not what I want to be doing in the future for, the rest of my life. So that's what's good about this is you get to try different things and realize, oh, I thought I was going to like that. Turns out I don't, which is exactly what we wanted them to learn. Her internship, though, I mean, I don't know about Eden, but they just didn't get to go into the office very often because Berlin was so locked down. So my daughter's incredibly social. She was disappointed that she didn't get to interact with more team members on a more regular basis. So that was unfortunate, but that was just a product of the environment at the time. And it probably won't be like that for other people moving forward. But she thought it was a really great experience. And like Aiden, she also stayed working for the company after the gap year. So that was kind of fun for her to come home and kind of have some built-in income because she had some hours to put in and had that flexibility. And they're still in contact. She's not doing as much for them right now, but they've kept that door open and they really enjoyed having them. So that was really cool.
Agreed.
Amazing feedback. Awesome. Well, these three folks are all donating their time from their busy lives and everything else that's going on to be here. So we're going to wrap up, and we so appreciate the three of you joining, and we appreciate the experiences, I think continued success of all of these students. And I think for me, and I think for probably all of us here, just knowing that this opens you to new possibilities. I think the way a lot of us talk about is hopefully it can elevate the ceiling and also open and unlock a lot of potential and opportunities. And clearly everybody's off and running and thriving in their own direction. So thank you so much for being here. Thanks everybody that joined us this evening. Hopefully we'll be able to chat with you. Folks that are wanting to continue the conversation, just a reminder, connecting with your gap year consultant will be the next step from here. And I hope to speak with everybody soon. Julie, Greg, Kristen, thank you all. Say hi to Connor, Raina, and Aiden as well, and have a great evening. Thank you guys so much.